Hi guys, so I wanted to show you this interview. It's a radio recording. It's an interview with the Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis on the issue of testing. So he's interviewed by Talk Radio, and he was asked about the possibility of members of the general public being tested. So let's hear what he had to say.
If these aren't being used, I'm willing to drive a couple of hours to go and get a test and come home. Why can't I get a test? Why can't people listening to the show right now go and get a test?
Well, there's a couple of points to that. First of all, if you have had an illness where you think you may have had coronavirus, as you outlined, Julia, right now, obviously, you could be tested and find that you don't have it at the moment.
Sorry, just a moment. So first of all, he's saying that if you feel you have had the coronavirus, you can be tested to see if you've already had it. But if somebody is showing symptoms, then they haven't had it. They may be having it. They haven't passed through it. And what's the point in testing people who have already had it if you're not going to trace who those people have come in contact with? I don't understand what he's trying to get at here.
We don't yet have the test that can tell you in a reliable way whether you've had it in the past and have now got some immunity. That is work that's ongoing,
So this is the antibody test he's talking about, not the coronavirus test. So the antibody test is a test that shows that you have produced certain antibodies, and that demonstrates that you are no longer infected, or that you have overcome the virus. But that's not the same as a coronavirus test that is the one that they check to see if you are infected. But this is all irrelevant because you're not doing any tracing. You're not doing any real testing, and you're not doing any tracing. Tracing in the sense that what South Korea was doing. South Korea were testing people who were symptomatic or asymptomatic, or not asymptomatic but not showing any symptoms. They were testing everyone, or as many people as possible. Anyone who was testing positive would have all of the contacts they had over the last number of days traced. They would trace the people who they had come in contact with, and they would test those people. And if any of those tested positive, they would trace the people that they respectively came in contact with, and so on until you cover as many people as possible. That's not what's happening in the UK. It's not happening in many countries, and it's a huge problem.
It's not with us just yet. But for people who've got those symptoms, ultimately, yes, we want to get to a point where we can test everybody who needs to be tested. That's the next stage of development. We've got to make...
Testing everyone who needs to be tested. No, you should test everyone. Not everyone who needs to be tested. I understand there's a problem here. The problem is you don't have enough tests. So you have to decide who you're going to test. But that can't be your long-term strategy. Your long-term strategy should be to test everyone. The short-term strategy is we only have a limited number, then we have to test the people who are at high risk of getting infected and protect those people if possible. But there is very little testing taking place at the moment. Yesterday, 22,000 tests were carried out, not 100,000. The goal of the government is to arrive at 100,000 tests a day. Yesterday, 22,000 tests were carried out. But that's not 22,000 people. It was actually 13,000 individuals who were tested. So some people were tested twice. So this is another aspect of testing. You can't just test an individual and leave it at that. That individual has to be tested on a continuous basis, because someone may test negative today, but in a week's time they could test positive, or 2 weeks' time, or a month's time. That's why you need to have continuous testing until you have a full picture of what the problem you're facing is.
Make sure that the tests that we've got are available in the first instance to the NHS workers on the front line who need them, Then as we've expanded that to the frontline care home workers and residents as well.
But this is why are you doing it this way? Why don't you just be clear with the public and say, we don't have enough tests. We would like to have more tests, but we don't have them. So we have to ration the tests. I know it's not a nice word to use, but you have to be honest with the public. Because many people are asking, why do I not have a test? Why can I not get a test? I don't feel well. I'm told to self-isolate. But I'm not getting tested. Testing people who are already sick, in a way, is too late. Because they have already come in contact with people. We know about this virus. We know that people can be asymptomatic. And they can spread the disease while they're still healthy. While they appear healthy.
And we're then out to police and fire and the emergency services more generally. As we expand, as we get to that 100,000 a day that Matt is determined to reach, I'm confident we will reach by the end of the month.
By the end of the month, by next week. 100,000, really? Yesterday it was 22,000. Next week you're going to have 100,000 a day. I really don't see that happening. You would need to be at least 50 or 60,000 a day now in order to arrive at 100,000 a day by the end of the month next week. But I don't see that happening. I think it's going to be a milestone that's going to be forgotten about. Oh, we tried. Okay, now we'll extend it, or we'll hope that the media don't remember it.
As we then go beyond that, we can then start to expand further. We've got to make sure that we can satisfy the demand with the supply that we have got, and we focus that in the area that is needed most. And I think that's the pathway that we've taken under the advice of the medical and scientific.
And then there's this response, under the advice of the medical experts. So they're resorting to saying, the medical experts told us to do that. No, I imagine the medical experts told you need to test as many people as possible. And their response was, we don't have enough tests. And the government's response, and the medical experts probably responded by saying, well, you should buy some more. And the response was probably, we don't want to buy any more because they're expensive, or because we don't really care, or because we want to find the cheaper option. And the cheaper option is herd immunity. But as I've said before, you can't have herd immunity without a vaccine, or 60 to 80% of the population need to be infected in order to reach herd immunity. And what does that mean? It means a lot of people not surviving. Let me know in the comments, guys, what you think. As always, much appreciated.